Today in this video, we are taking a look at a Photoshop plugin I have used for many years now. I rely on it, I depend on it. I can't imagine using Photoshop at this point without it. And yet, for whatever reason, I've never made a dedicated video about it. Well, today that changes. Today I'm going to share with you 10 things that I love about TKActions. TKActions is essentially a user interface that triggers pre-built actions that come with the plugin. And these actions are everything from simple basic actions up to full-blown, rather complex actions that if you were to try and go in and do yourself, using Photoshop without the plugin, it would be rather complicated and it would take quite a bit of time as well. Quick disclaimer, this video is not paid for, it's not sponsored, I'm not affiliated with the developer in any way. I am a paid user, I buy the upgrade every time a new version comes out. I'm making this video because I love the plugin and I think it's worth talking about, worth sharing, and so that's what we're going to do today. Okay, so let's jump into TKActions and take a look at the plugin itself. Here's the plugin as I currently have it set up and configured. I have the TKActions combo panel up here. I have the multi-mask panel here, and then I have the new My Actions panel down here. New because this panel was recently added in the most recent version of TKActions. Now the combo panel up here, if you've never seen this before in one of my videos or someone else's video, it looks a little intimidating, right? I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a bunch of buttons here. It looks rather complex, I know, but it's really not. What it is essentially just a bunch of basic actions, just little time-saving things. Like for example, if I were to throw a curves adjustment layer on top of an image, well, these 8 buttons here are all just blend modes. These are just quick buttons, so I can be changing the blend mode of the current layer. Button here to be like deleting the current layer, a button to create a new layer, a button that creates basically a composite of all layers underneath. And then there's options here to be selecting skies, selecting a subject, expanding and collapsing selections, fill, stroke, like zooming, view tools here. Pretty basic stuff. I mean, a lot of these are just here as, quick little time-saving things. And that's basically all they do, and that's what they're for. But there are certain buttons in here and certain things that are more powerful, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. First thing I want to show you are the dodging and burning tools. And these 2 buttons here, actually there's like 4 buttons here, but I'll explain that in a minute. I use these like all the time whenever I'm dodging and burning an image. This button here, this is burn, and then this one over here is dodge. And you'll notice that they are kind of cut in half. The reason they're cut in half is because there are 2 options for adding dodging and 2 options for adding burning. So let's say that I wanted to like dodge this right here. I wanted to brighten this area of the image a little bit. Well, I would just come down here to the dodge tool. I would click on the left side of it, and that created a new layer with a 50% gray fill, a blend mode of overlay. The foreground color automatically changed to white, and then the brush tool was automatically selected. So just by pushing that, by clicking that one button there in the combo panel, I am ready to go and start dodging the image, and I can start brushing on exactly where I want the image to be brighter. Now, I'm not being very careful here. I'm not being, very selective. I'm just, simply painting white on top of the image. And with that overlay blend mode, it is brightening the image underneath the brush. And then we have the burn tool next to it. So let's click on burn. Again, 50% gray fill, this time a soft light blend mode. Black is now our foreground color, and the brush tool is automatically selected. And then I can just go in and start painting exactly where I want the image to be darker. So the reason why these buttons are split, and there's a left side and a right side, you already saw the left side, that is the 50% gray fill. But if we click the right side, then we get a transparent layer instead of the 50% gray. Now this works exactly the same as the other one, does the exact same thing when you're painting on, same net result. The main difference between the two is that with a transparent layer, you can more easily select the, what it is that you painted on because it is isolated on that transparent layer. It is easier to be selecting. But the advantage of the 50% gray version is that you are able to see the changes that you're making. So same result either way, whether you choose to paint on top of a transparent background or a 50% gray background. So inside this red button, there are more actions. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff in here that you're able to do. And I want to show you first the paint contrast tool. And this does exactly what it sounds like. This allows you to paint contrast into a specific area of your image, an area where it could use a little extra contrast. And so we're going to click on paint contrast. You can either focus your contrast adjustments across both the shadows and the highlights, or you can target just the shadows or target just the highlights. If you leave this at 50% gray, that is going to target both. Whereas if you put this up to 100%, that is only going to focus contrast into the brighter areas. Set it down to 0, and that's going to focus contrast in the darker. So let me put this back to 50% gray, click OK. Let's just paint some contrast into this particular region of the image. I'm going to slide over here. And again, this is, it's looking perhaps a little light. Hopefully you're able to see this on video. So let's take a look at the before and after. So that's before and that's after. And that's literally just from me, just quickly, as you just saw, just painted these changes exactly where I wanted them to be. Okay, the next feature I want to show you is all the way up here at the top of the combo panel, and that is this little blue and red split button right here. If you've ever, missed not having a black and white clipping warning or alert inside of Photoshop, something that'll tell you if your blacks are clipping or your whites are clipping, well, this will do it for you. And then very similar to Lightroom, it'll paint blue over any regions that are totally black, that have no detail. And then you can see red just over these little specular highlights over the snow on the ground. And then when you want to take it away, you just click the button again and it's automatically removed. So very quick, very simple, nice little tool to be just gut checking your images while you're editing. Okay, next feature of the combo panel that I want to show you, and we're going to be getting into the multi-mask panel down here in a little bit, but the next one that I want to show you is a rather popular effect in the world of landscape photography. It's been around a long time, talking about the Orton effect. Now, if you've never heard of the Orton effect before, I guarantee you that you have seen it a number of times in the portfolio work of some landscape photographers. It is this Photoshop, photo editing technique where an image gets rather glowy and kind of blurry and, rather soft and painterly. It almost looks like it's on canvas as opposed to a digital image on screen. It is a rather popular effect. So TKActions has it built in here so that you don't have to know how to actually create the effect yourself, and it's really quick and easy to apply. So let's take a look at it. We have the two options. We have Orton effect and Smart Orton. Smart Orton just gives you a little more customization and control. So we're going to use Smart Orton. I think that one is probably better. And then the first step is to choose how much blur we want. Now, typically you use higher values for higher megapixel cameras. If you have a higher megapixel shot, you may want to go higher with the number, with your radius here. Let's just say 15. And this really kind of sets how much blur, how much glow there's going to be and bloom there's going to be in the highlights. So let's just set this to 15 and I'll click OK. And now you can see that the image is no longer blurred. I mean, our detail has returned, but the highlights are much glowier, they're richer, and they just have, just a completely different look. Personally, I think a lot of times the Orton effect is a little much. It can be a little heavy sometimes. So what you can do then, just really simple, you can just come up here to the opacity slider, and then I usually just drop it all the way down to 0, and then just slowly just push it back up again until I get it right about where I like it, right about where I think it starts to look good. Okay, so let's switch images here for the next feature. And with this one here, I don't know about you, but oftentimes I come across an image where there's one particular part of the image where it's just, it doesn't feel harmonious with the others. Like there's something about the color in it that isn't quite the same. For example, this shot here, where, I have this nice like orange and yellow, golden hour light that is hitting these two rocks here. But this one here, for whatever reason, just didn't catch the same light. And so it looks a little sad and just a little out of place. Well, that's really simple to do with this particular tool here called Color Clone. And when we click on Color Clone, we then just, choose whichever color we want to emulate. And I'm just clicking on this rock here with the eyedropper, click OK. And then you just paint on whatever it is that you want the color on. And notice that this is not affecting the texture. Like I'm not, changing anything with the detail or the cracks or anything that's on the rock here. I'm just adding a little additional color to some of these neutral areas. And I think a little goes a long way with a tool like this. You probably don't want to go too hard because then it'll start to look a little fake. But let me just toggle that on and off and see just how it warmed up the neutrals a little bit there. Just really delicate, just a really, small little touch. Okay, next feature I want to show you again inside of the red TK button, and that is this option here called Clean Dust. This is especially helpful if you shoot with a mirrorless camera and you're out in the field and you're changing lenses. Well, you probably know that, especially if your sensor is not protected, you can get dust on the sensor and then that dust appears in your images. And a lot of times you don't even notice the dust. Well, with this tool here, you just click on Clean Dust and then it adds some layers to the layers palette that makes it easier to visualize and see dust in your image. It automatically selects the healing brush tool in Photoshop and creates a layer to be painting on. And then you just look around for, there's one right there. You look around for a little bit of dust in your image and then you just click on it and then it's gone. And then let me just come over here. There is one right up here. One more little dot. One more little bit of sensor dust just right up here in the corner. Take that out really quick. Don't really see anything else. So when you're done, you just come back over here to the panel, click on Clean Dust again, and then all those layers will be removed and you're left with your Heal Clone layer that has those dust fixes that you just made. Okay, so now that we're warmed up and we've taken a look at some of the really nice time-saving tools and features that are available in the combo panel, there's one more up there actually but I'm gonna save that for later. We're gonna come back to it in a minute. Now that we've done that, I think it's a good time to get into the real meat and potatoes of TKActions. It's raison d'etre, one of the big reasons why people use it, one of the big reasons why I use it, talking about luminosity masks. Okay, so to create just a simple basic luminosity mask using TKActions, the best way to do that is to click on this second button here in the multi-mask panel. And when you do that, you're gonna get the color picker tool with an eyedropper, and then you want to select the area of the image that you want to edit, the thing that you want to be applying some adjustments to. So if I wanted to apply some adjustments to my clouds and the brightest areas of the image, I would click on that up there. Or if I wanted to affect the darkest tones in the image, I would click on this dark region down here. And actually, let's just go ahead and keep that. Let's do the dark region. I want to make some edits there. And then I click OK. And then the plugin builds a mask for me. Now, just like any other mask, white reveals, black conceals. So anything that is white in this image is going to be, is shown by the mask, is being revealed by the mask. Whereas anything that is black or dark is being concealed. It is being hidden by the mask. And so now we're able to make some type of change using this mask as our selection. And to do that, you come down here to the bottom of the panel and you see all these little tools down here. Now, some of these are adjustment layers, like you have curves, you have levels, you have brightness, hue, and saturation. There's also some more complex things that we can get into. There's more adjustment layers in here if that's of interest. But let me just do something really basic here. So let me just do a hue saturation, because commonly sometimes images get a little saturated in the shadows. And so now what it's created is a hue saturation adjustment layer with our luminosity mask that we just created assigned to it. So whatever changes that we make using this adjustment layer will only affect the dark tones in the image. So I can pull the saturation down, and now I've pulled all of the saturation out of the darkest tones in the image. So the other couple of ways to create a luminosity mask include this tool here. This is a color mask tool. So let's say that I want to select everything in the image that has that brown kind of orange tone to it. And then there is the classic luminosity mask plugin here. And this one works more like a zone system, kind of like the old Ansel Adams zone system, where each zone is assigned a numerical value. There's also a calculator mode in here too. So you can say, I want everything between darks 1 and darks 4, but I don't want 5 and 6. well, you can, build a mask that way if you want to. Doesn't really matter which tool you use. They all three kind of, basically do the same thing. They're just different ways of doing it. Okay, the next tool in TKActions to take a look at is something that I have always wanted in Photoshop. I don't understand why Adobe's never added this, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't exist. Any guesses what I'm talking about? I'm talking about a color grading interface. Check this out. If we come down here to the multi-mask tool and then click on this button with the three little boxes on it, then we get an editable color wheel. Check that out. First, we click on this plus button to add a curves adjustment layer. We have shadows, we have midtones, we have highlights. Let me just throw shadows on here. And then we can just drag shadows, say like over towards blue to inject some blue into our shadows. Let me now adjust the highlights, and I'm gonna inject a little warmth, a little bit of orange and yellow into the highlights. And this is just so much nicer and so much easier than having to go into the curves panel and to be trying to, like adjust the curves, exactly how you want them to be in order to be, messing around with color. Having a color wheel is just so much nicer. And again, like everything else, because we're working in Photoshop, you can drop the opacity of this if you want to, perhaps dial back the look a little bit, whatever it is you want to do. So for me personally, I love that tool. I love having a color grading interface in Photoshop. Okay, so let's move on and take a look at the next cool feature of TKActions, and that is a fourth type of mask. And that is either a vibrance or a saturation mask. These are very similar to a luminosity mask, except now we're talking about color. We're talking about the vibrancy of color. We're talking about the saturation of color. So with saturation, what you basically want to do is just walk up the numerical scale here. And the higher that you go, the more targeted it becomes. So eventually it'll just, if it turns black like that, it means that everything is concealed. There's nothing above that saturation value. And now that we have this mask, what we can do is either use a hue saturation adjustment layer and just pull down the saturation. That's one option. We can do it, just like that. You've seen that a couple of times so far. Another way to use it would be to let's do another saturation mask. Come down here to the sub menu, and then we can use a saturation painting tool. And then with this, we can actually come in and paint where we want to remove saturation from the image. So if there is like a particular, area of your shot and you're kind of squinting at it and you're looking at it and you're like, I really wish I could just take some of the heat off of that and tone it down a little bit and balance everything out a bit more. The brush is a really effective tool to be doing that. And now for Vibrance. So the way that Vibrance works is you basically want to step down this numerical scale here until you see your histogram land, kind of like right around the middle where it's like right about there. And what this is doing is it is automatically creating a mask that is selecting areas of the image that could use a little bit of boost, like they're a little neutral in color, and they could use just a little bit of vibrancy added. So now that we have the mask created, then we again choose an output. What do we want to do with it? Well, we want to increase saturation. So I'm going to use the hue saturation adjustment layer. And then when I add saturation using this tool, it is only adding saturation to the areas that actually need it. Okay, so the final feature of TKActions that I want to share with you is one of my favorites. It's one, I know I keep saying that, but it truly is. It's one that I use all the time, and that is the web sharpening tool. This thing is so awesome because if you are someone who is frequently exporting images like for clients, for like your website, for social media, you're always having to go through this process of taking like a multi-layered PSD and you're editing in Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB, and you just want to get a quick JPEG image in sRGB that has been flattened and has been sharpened as well and has been optimized for viewing on screen at a smaller resolution. This tool can do all of that. Basically, all you do is just input your target dimensions, like what the longest edge of your image is, what you want it to be. Then you choose a sharpening strength level, which should be between 0 and 100, 100 being maximum sharpness. That's what this opacity field is here. You can even do things like, adds a little extra sharpness if you want, attach an additional action on top of the processing that it's going to do. If you wanted to like add borders to an image and you have some action that you created that you want to append to it. There's also an option to be applying a watermark. So if you are someone who likes to apply watermarks to your images when you save them for your website, or maybe sharing with a client, something like that, choose exactly where you want it. So that's really cool. I never use it, but it might be useful for you. But what I do use and I love are these presets, because these are like, target dimensions and settings that I set up for different things, for like Instagram, my website, for YouTube thumbnails. Really, really helpful. So let me just show you. So let me just click on vertical here, and this is going to export a 1600 pixel tall JPEG image in the sRGB color space that has been sharpened and optimized for viewing on screen. What TKActions is doing is that it is using luminosity masks to apply sharpening to the image in such a way so that it looks natural, so that it's not over sharpening areas of the image, like, the highlights in your shot, areas where it's going to be, super noticeable. And it's tailoring the sharpening to specific tonal regions within the image that would benefit from some additional sharpening. So like in this image here, it is primarily targeting the underside of this walkway up here, this boat down here, all of that. That's why you get really nice sharpening results out of this plugin, because it's not just a blanket unsharp mask like across everything like you usually get. It is more selective, it's more tailored. Okay, so that about does it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully this video gave you a good sense of what TKActions is all about. If you would like to learn more about the plugin and perhaps purchase a copy of the plugin for yourself, there is a link down below in the video description that you may use. And while you're down there, there's also a link that you can use to sign up for my weekly email newsletter. I put out reviews, I put out tutorials, I also create videos from the field when I go out and create new images. If you would like to keep in touch with me and you would like to receive updates and also receive some written content that I don't share here on my YouTube channel, I would recommend checking that out. So you can sign up for my weekly email newsletter down below in the video description too. That's it, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you next time.